Yes, if I were to be talking strictly about the base game of Half-Life 2, I wouldn't necessarily say it holds up, especially to its gigantic reputation of being the best game ever made. I will explain why later, but if I consider the base game, along with Episode 1 and 2, which are the sequels, then I'd say it does hold up. Don't get me wrong, I still think the base game is impressive and fun. I am not saying it's bad, because it definitely isn't, but it should be played alongside Episode 1 and 2. Half-Life 2 can be confusing, especially if you haven't played the Half-Life of Black Mesa before it. My basic understanding is that you play as Gordon Freeman, a sort of time agent for this creepy dude, who places you in a situation in order to change the course of events.
The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world.
The world has been invaded by aliens who subjugated the human population, at least in this city, and built a big spooky tower in the middle of it. You are kind of a symbol of the human resistance because of things that happened in the previous game, and mostly just go around wreaking havoc. Episode 1 and 2 are immediate sequels to the base game. See, I can't think of any particular reason why you shouldn't play Half-Life 2, unless you hate first-person shooters. If you like them and have never played Half-Life 2, I'd say it's worth playing it. After all, it's always interesting to see what the hype is all about. Obviously, if you hate unresolved endings, you might want to avoid it, but if you do play it, just remember to play Episode 1 and 2. Scoring Half-Life 2 is pretty hard. The truth of the matter is, I streamed it in 2021 and did not experience it when it came out in 2004. And I wasn't even playing games in 2004, I was 7. So it's impossible for me to imagine how it could have been like to have played it then. I can tell it's impressive for the time and that it really wanted to be. But paradoxically, I don't think the reason why it was impressive in 2004 are the same reasons why it's still good in 2021. For example, obviously the graphics were awesome in 2004, which should be taken into consideration. But if you're looking for a pretty game in 2021, this isn't gonna be it. What I did find impressive was not as much the graphics themselves or the character models, but the character animations. The game doesn't have pre-recorded cutscenes, and all of the story is conveyed to dialogue. And then the NPC have scripted animation in the various scenes that take place in this game world. I personally really enjoy this kind of storytelling in video games because it makes the characters feel more alive and more autonomous, and generally I just strongly prefer it to cutscenes. And the animations are really good. The style really isn't for me. I tend to find this kind of realism boring. To be simple, just boring. I'm not interested in this grey world. And there's many games like it. So do I want to give it 10 out of 10 for graphics? Not really. I don't like them that much. Does it deserve it? Probably. I don't know. But I'm just gonna give it 9 out of 10 because I'm petty. Another aspect that I feel like was very impressive in 2004 and doesn't necessarily hold up is the gameplay, honestly. I don't mean to say it's bad or not fun, because I had a lot of fun. It's kind of hectic. It's famous for throwing you from one set piece to another, and it does that, and it's pretty awesome. But I could tell it was trying to be impressive. One of my biggest complaints is that the game introduces new mechanics and never brings them back. And it does this over and over. Generally, when stuff like that happens, I call it gimmicky. It feels like a gimmick. You just made this thing for this section, it's kind of just a throwaway thing. For example, I was really surprised about how little I had to use my grab gun, even though it was such an innovative mechanic. Of course, there's the ending part, but I feel like even that could have been cooler if I had to use the grab gun more consistently throughout the game. There's 2 vehicle sections that I just found strange because they were like not an introduction to this new mechanic, but instead were just like a one and done sections. And speaking of that, like, don't get me started on the antlion ball, cause honestly I have no clue what they were going for. It was cool for like 10 minutes, but after the section was over, I never had the opportunity to use it again, and I just had this useless ball inside my inventory for the rest of the game, and I just find that absurd. But at the same time, this is where episode 1 and 2 come in. They didn't bring back the antlion ball, but they did solve these issues. They're like consistent, good, fun. I just wish the base game was as coherent and cohesive, because I don't dislike any specific section of the base game, but it just feels like a very segmented experience and kind of episodic, I would even say. But considering the 2 actual episodes, most of my complaints become much less relevant, and I did have a lot of fun anyways. So my final score for gameplay is 8 out of 10. I don't honestly have too much to say about immersion. Half-Life 2 is a very immersive game. First-person games tend to be, by default, but on top of that, the way characters do interact with you and move in the game world just makes it particularly immersive. I wish more games had this style of storytelling overall and perspective, and would just ditch cutscenes in favor of in-game events and scenes. I also think a silent protagonist is a very immersive choice if done well. It really makes it easy to empathize with the protagonist without making them an avatar. Let me put it like this. Through the first-person perspective, the fact that Gordon is silent and the way NPCs interact with him made me feel like I was Gordon Freeman. Not that Gordon Freeman was me, if that makes sense to anybody. I'd give it a 10 out of 10, but I have to shove off a point because I just feel like the base game was just often kind of confusing. Some of the cutscenes gave priority to the character building and banter rather than explaining the plot, which can be a good thing, but not having a clear idea what's going on can and did for me break immersion. This is yet another issue that was fixed in episode 1 and 2, which were more clear and not confusing at all. So I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 for immersion. Now, I understand the game was groundbreaking in many ways, including like being an FPS and having a story, but I don't care much about low bars. I have high standards. It really feels like the story is almost there, but is not really there. Like someone wrote it without having a clear idea what was gonna happen in the end. It was just vague. This is not carry over in episode 1 and 2, which makes me think like they had a plan after the base game. But during the base game, I'm just like, yeah, they had these set pieces and this concept, but like, I doubt they knew who the fuck the G-Man was, you know? But at the same time, like, it's not bad or anything, right? And this is like a moment I will like just give some points because it's such an old game, you know? And, you know, it builds character well, which honestly, I don't even see in new games nowadays. Like, some characters just suck. So, you know, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10 for story, including kind of characters in it. Overall, I wish I could give Half-Life 2 5 stars. I just don't have it in me. If it was all as good as episode 1 and 2, I would have. I think some of the issues I have talked about might have been forgivable or not even noticeable in 2004. But with hindsight, it just isn't as perfect as it is made out to be by its reputation, you know what I mean? For me, Half-Life 2 is a 4-star game. At the end of the day, we're not gonna go back in time. It's not gonna be 2004 again and you can experience it as this explosive experience, you know? I would still definitely recommend it to basically anyone as long as they play episode 1 and 2 as well. But it's not gonna be, in my opinion, a 5-star experience in 2021. So it's 4 stars for me and that's it. As for me, hi, I'm Adi. I streamed Half-Life 2 at the beginning of 2021, I believe. It was fun. I still stream at twitch.tv/CriticOwl at 2 p.m. EST. I will be posting more reviews in the future. And you can also follow me on TikTok or Twitter. Yes, Twitter. You can find the links in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, I did like the game. I gave it 4 stars, alright? I didn't hate it.